Hi, this is John Pettigrew, and you're listening to Talking Through My Hat, a podcast that explores bookish businesses, the fantastic people who create them, and what those people have learned. I'm a hat wearer, a recovering editor, and the creator of Future Proofs, enabling editors and authors to work better online. To find out more, visit wearefutureproofs.com or follow me on Twitter at John_Pettigrew. Welcome to this week's Talking Through My Hat. Today I'm talking with Nina-Sophia Miralles, the founder of Londnr magazine, which started in 2016 as a digital culture magazine and has since also gained a print edition. She's a writer and editor with a focus on arts, culture and lifestyle. She's served as head of partnerships and special projects for the Society of Young Publishers last year and has received awards from the Hospital Club and the Young Stationers. So welcome to the podcast, Nina-Sophia.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Absolute pleasure.
Really exciting to be here.
Yeah. So let's start with Londnr. How do you describe the magazine these days?
Well, so Londnr is arts, culture, lifestyle and fashion in our capital, of course, although we do sometimes go outside of that. But the main thing about Londnr is that the aim behind setting it up was to support writers and kind of give them a platform where they would be heard and seen, because it's very difficult. I used to work as a freelance writer, and it's an incredibly difficult space because first of all platforms, all magazines, all newspapers are obviously cutting staff. Yeah. They also tend to work with people they've been working with for the last 20 to 40 years. Yeah. Of course, you can do a blog and your blog can be very successful, but I don't consider blogging journalism. And so I guess it's twofold. One, I want to provide really discerning, unusual, quirky cultural articles online, as well as support writers and now artists. We have a photography initiative alongside that.
Right. So Londnr's been around for a few years now. What, 3, 4?
Yes, three and a half.
3.5 years.
3.5 years.
So has it changed a lot in that time? Has your approach to it changed, or are you still kind of heading in very much the same direction?
Hugely. I mean, I think the really different thing about Londnr compared to maybe some of the people from your podcast that I've been listening to is that I didn't start it with the idea of a business. I was working as a freelance writer, writing fiction, feeling a bit confused and editing a different online magazine. And someone I knew suggested to me, why didn't I just start my own? And that way, at least I could write what I wanted to write and be in charge of my own exposure if that was possible at all. Yeah. And he was in marketing. So that was kind of great because we started the platform together so that he could practice marketing and had a product to market, and that product would be the online magazine. And it was really just like a side hobby for friends. And we never really thought about it as a business and so on. But then things kind of started happening and moving forward. We also do a lot of events, and those are very popular and made money. And then well, my partner left, and I was left with this kind of half-formed kind of, is it just a project for myself? Can it be my job? And I just decided to go for it for, well, not very businessy reasons, because I loved it and because I wasn't good at much else.
I think it's, as you'll probably hear as you listen to some of the podcast episodes, that thing that it's not necessarily, I think a lot of people don't start businesses because they're businessy people. Some people do. Yeah. But a lot of it's a case of, no, this thing, I need to do this thing.
Yeah. And more than anything, I wanted to do it for myself, and I wanted to do it for writers. And that continues to be the case. I mean, I have people constantly telling me things like, you don't do enough sponsored posts. Imagine how much money you could rake in. And, my best friend runs a restaurant. I bet they'd love you to write an article about this and that. And I just, it's like all these things that people say. I'm like, so you want me to change my platform to suit you, to make money that will then lose my audience because the thing about it is that we don't try and sell people things.
Yeah.
We don't have a political agenda. We just want to write an interesting culture article that's nicely written and properly researched. It's, you
So
know.
how do you do that balance then? As you say, it started off as a side project, a hobby,
Sure.
and turned into an actual business, a job.
Yes.
Which means you have to make money out of it.
Yes.
So
Yes.
how does Londnr make money? You're not sort of doing, I'd say, the classic online content thing these days of sponsored posts, hidden advertorial kind of stuff. So how do you square that kind of commercial circle?
Yeah, absolutely. So that takes a great amount of my ingenuity, trying to find other ways to do it. But I also feel that, it's good to look at other people and see what they're doing, like, for example, advertorials, and that obviously really works. But you also don't want to do what everybody's doing, because that's a trend.
Yeah.
And it also takes away from the authority of the organization and the trust of the reader, which is really key to me. So one of the main things that I started doing was running events. First, I did these to promote Londnr, but then I realized that they were very popular events, things people really want to come to. They started out being events for writers. So we'd get people in to talk about, any kind of writing: script writing, film writing, fashion journalism, how to get started writing, all sorts of things, and people really liked it, which was lovely. And then I started charging ticket sales, because we'd use bigger venues or have more people speaking and so on, and that was actually really successful. So we do these Londnr events. Now we've branched out slightly. This year we haven't done so many writer-focused events, but more broadly cultural, specifically fashion events. And the key there, I found, is kind of getting in a really, really big speaker. So we had the editor-in-chief of Harper's Bazaar talking about Chanel, which is obviously a kind of blockbuster event that people do want to come to. And it was at Maison Asseline, which is this kind of beautiful luxury publishers in Piccadilly. So the setting is gorgeous, you know, and still it's slightly linked to books, because she wrote a biography of Chanel. And there were people in the audience who wanted to talk about, the research and how you write a biography. So so that sort of thing does really well for us.
So you're kind of taking the online, the magazine itself is almost you're establishing your brand then, and you're using the brand to make money rather than the magazine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's quite good.
I think, and I see a lot of companies, online magazines or general magazines doing that, events companies, big events companies sometimes have a magazine. The cleverest thing, model that I've seen is I used to work for Harrods magazine as well. And Harrods magazine is genius, pure, unadulterated genius, because Harrods has 2 billion turnover a year, and they have an in-house magazine which goes out to all their top tier buyers. And of course, with all that money from Harrods, they have so much of it to pump into making a really beautiful, really high quality product.
And that supports their brand for those customers.
Exactly.
It's kind of the other way around to what you're doing, isn't it? Because they've got the brand and the magazine's supporting it, whereas you're leading with the magazine, with the content.
I think had I known better and planned at the beginning and been aware of all these things, I would have tried to. Yeah, I would have tried to do it the other way around too. But it's
if it's working, it's working.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't argue with things that work.
Yeah.
That's great.
Just be grateful for them, really.
Absolutely. So I was really interested to say you started Londnr as a digital-only online magazine, but you started doing a print edition as well. How did that come about?
Yes, well, that's very, very exciting, and actually very timely that we're doing this interview now, because the print magazine launched this week.
I should say, for the purpose of those who are listening, we're talking in late August 2018.
Yes, but the magazine will be relevant for a while to come.
And there'll be future
get
editions.
An issue.
So, yeah.
So going into print, everyone was really skeptical about me doing that because there's this whole, like general panic. Print is dead, magazines are dying. Condé Nast are shutting, I think on average 3 magazines a year. But if you look at the magazines they're shutting, I was just reading the other day, they shut brides and they shut home cooking, things that really aren't relevant anymore. And that's okay, times change. And what is actually genuinely thriving are indie magazines. Somerset House had just done a big exhibition, exactly that, celebrating, I think it's called Process Festival. I'm sure it is actually. Celebrating independent print and the printed word in the UK. So it's definitely, I don't know that it's a huge trend, but it's working for a lot of people. And the key there is that, a lot of the magazines that are going out of print or being shut are, as I say, things that just aren't relevant in our world
anymore. And they're often the mass market things. And this is one of the big changes that the online world's brought, that it's all about niche now. You can go and you can always find the specific community or the specific language or culture that you're after. And if you can take that and say you've built a community online, and if these are people who are interested in getting that content in print,
absolutely,
why not? You can produce them a good product.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, people say you can't make money, but the price margins are very different. So a mass market magazine can be anywhere from 20p, but the most expensive ones are £4. Vogue is £4. I think even, The Economist and all of that's £4. But indie magazines are on average £10.
Yeah.
So the markup is much. Obviously that's to, not to make loads of money necessarily.
The economies of scale are different.
Yeah, it's a different scale. It's as you say, it's finding your niche.
So how long have you been working on putting that together then? Has that been a plan for a while, I'm guessing?
Really, almost too much time. I'm almost embarrassed to admit it. I would say about a year.
That seems fair.
Which is a very long time, but also it was. So I worked at Harrods Magazine, where I was a writer there, but you see the whole production line.
Yeah.
Except that Harrods Magazine has a huge staff. But so I knew the kind of most like bare bones of what production of a magazine is. And I think really why it took so long is because there are so many things you really have no idea about it. And because Londnr is a very small operation, I have an art director and I have a publisher, but there's things like, how do you decide what paper your magazine will be printed on?
It's the subtle decisions that no outsider ever thinks of, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So the paper thing really blew my mind.
What's the cover and how is it going to be bound? And
exactly. So kind of the practicalities of it. And then because I really do everything for Londnr, so that's like negotiating contracts with writers, we feature a lot of artists, not interviews in the magazine, but instead of doing kind of fashion editorials, we've printed like series of high gloss images of contemporary artists' work, which I think, I think it's quite original.
That's quite interesting.
I also think it's quite beautiful.
Yeah, because art is one of those things that doesn't work as well on a screen. Because it's the technical thing of seeing something as an RGB image on a laptop screen. Can never technically be the same as a 4-color print.
Yeah, and a lot of time that artist people may not know unless you're in the art world, and we're not a specifically art world magazine, so it's definitely reaching a further audience. And the practicalities of it, I think it's lovely to be able to show artists' work rather than be like every other magazine and spend loads of money doing expensive photo shoots with clothes that everybody already knows about. And the other thing that's really beneficial is that we like to say that it's timeless product. product. So you can read an article we wrote in 2016 and it will still apply now. So with art, again, the beauty of that is that, it's not trend based, essentially.
Yeah, each edition of the magazine then becomes an artifact rather than something that is going to expire. You could actually keep them on the shelf.
Yeah, and we want people to keep them. We call them coffee table magazines.
It's kind of National Geographic model, really, isn't
it? That's a lovely way of putting it.
People keep those for 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah. Well, I would love it if people felt that way, for sure. Yeah, but it's definitely, and it's made to be indulgent. The other thing is that nowadays everybody's so busy, everything has to be useful, you have to get something out of something. Our magazine is, of course, full of interesting things that you may not know about, but it is also indulgent. It's, you sit to read it, to enjoy the writing and the topics. I mean, the topics are really, really varied. We have an article about women who used to keep pet cheetahs in the 20s.
That's unusual.
Yeah. About how pineapples became the ultimate status symbol in the UK in the 18th century. Yeah. And so we try and dig up some pretty wacky stories. I mean, actually,
it sounds like you're succeeding from that little summary you gave us. I think that
my favourite example, I'll just say this one thing, of our kind of editorial idea is we run a column online that's called A Brief History Of, and it's of anything. We've done parks, lamps, hats, which actually is sort of in your line.
On topic, yeah.
And we did a brief history of milkshakes, which when I commissioned it, I thought, oh God, I wonder if that's just going to talk about the best places to have a milkshake in London. But actually, the writer really did me justice by turning it into an article about how milkshakes are a really popular murder weapon. Why that was true? Yes. Really, I mean, how would you know that? That's really blew my mind. And then he really, kind of went into it, talking about the reasons for it, how people found out about it, how it became a trend at one point to murder people with milkshakes, how the CIA sent one to the Fidel Castro. So, allegedly.
Okay, that's things I didn't know. Certainly, I can chalk that one up.
Yeah. So, pretty kooky.
Yeah. Well, let's change tack a little bit and think about the business side of it, because we've kind of touched on it a bit. And your background is, as you say, you're a writer, and that's kind of how you come at this. So presumably the business side was not the thing you were looking for, as you said.
No.
So how did you go about learning to actually run a business when you made that jump to go, okay, it's not a hobby anymore, I'm going to do this for real, by my work?
Well, it was and continues to be fairly nightmarish. But I tell you what, I have to say, I make a point, or my aim, of cultivating as large a network of people as possible. I go to a lot of events. I insist friends introduce me to their friends.
Excellent.
I cold email people that I think are interesting or amazing, and ask for their advice. I mean, right at the beginning of the magazine, I literally just went through all my favorite magazines, and I emailed the editors and asked if I could speak to them. And some, a lot of time people don't answer, but sometimes people do, and amazing things come of it. Like I tracked down the editor-in-chief of Harrods magazine, which was no mean feat. And I pestered her for a good 6 months, and eventually she invited me for a meeting, and we had a great chat. She gave me loads of really great advice. And then we kept in touch, and then she spoke at one of my events. And then, we continued to keep in touch, and eventually I ended up writing for them for quite a while. So, things come of that sort of thing as well.
As you say, it's always difficult to plan ahead, but simultaneously you're trying to create content that is timeless, that is going to last for a while. So as you think about, the next 5 years, do you think about how to make sure London is still around, or is it really kind of just the next 5 weeks? Or do you have a plan for like 50 years to go, in 50 years we're going to have taken over the world, we're going to be, the new whatever?
Oh, well, I certainly think we should try. I really like this question of yours, actually, about the next 5 years, because at first it was definitely touch and go. I'll try this, we'll see what happens next month. But now it's a little bit more serious, and I know my space a lot better.
Yeah.
The other thing about going into something that was a project and so on, I started Londnr when I was 22. So that means there's no 40 years experience in an industry. There's no 40 years experience in any industry. There's literally not even 1 year experience in any industry. I did some freelance work. I did a degree in literature. I worked in a law office for a while. It's not, I just went in completely blind. So obviously it was very, I really had to understand not just the industry, but the space I specifically was in and trying to fill. So I have now a very good understanding of that. And I know where to place myself and who I need to work with and where I need to get to and what I believe would be really good steps or milestones to reach. The print magazine having been one, because I did always want to go into print. I had a hunch it was going to work. And then indie magazine started doing really well, and I was like, I knew it. Let's do this.
It's possible.
But now that I have the print magazine out, also it's a huge commitment. So it's not, you can't just do one and then be like, oh, we'll see what happens, which when I first planned it, that was my attitude, we'll see how it goes. But I'm still selling something, and unless you're selling before you even have a product, then you're already behind. So I'm, right now I'm selling, promoting, desperately begging everyone I know to get their hands on a copy, basically to decrease my chances of having a stroke this autumn. But also my ploy was to go to venues I know in London and speak to them and get them to buy it in bulk up front before it was ready. But that again is part of having a network with people I can go to and persuade.
Well, it's a good idea, because if they can use it as content however they like, they can use it as promotion, they can use it.
Exactly.
They can sell it on.
And I can convince them face to face, which is another great thing about being in London, because people always try to go global with things because of the internet. But the beauty of, obviously anyone in the world can read Londonr, but the beauty of being here, of doing our events here, is that I meet more people that I can engage with genuinely, and that kind of brings me to my next steps. In ways that I think other people can't do, because emailing is great, and a lot of great things come from just getting in touch with someone. But something like speaking to a venue, convincing them to buy a magazine that has never existed before is not something you can do over email.
There is that's always that tension between the world of digital and the communication and the doors that opens versus that. There's the human aspect of it, that face-to-face, the personal, that you can't do, that a locality can provide.
And I really believe in that. I mean, even with all my writers, I don't work with writers I haven't met personally or see regularly and so on, because you establish a relationship, and obviously it means you care about them and they care about you.
It helps build trust on both sides, doesn't it?
The work will be better,
Yeah. Well, yes, they know you'll pay them, kind of stuff. That's great. So what have you learned about yourself from kind of going through this Londonr experience? Do you still think of yourself the same way you did?
Well, I still think of myself as a writer, because that's who I always wanted to be. And but what have I learned about myself? I definitely have found out that I'm very tenacious. I didn't know that. And I think that must have just come from it probably developed it by getting frustrated, because a lot of doors close in your face all the time. And at some point you just crack and you think, you know what? No, I'm getting through this door. So tenacity for sure. Also problem solving. That's kind of like critical thinking, really, isn't it? Something comes up, and something always inevitably comes up that you never dreamed in your wildest dreams would happen, or could even be a problem. And then you have to solve it. And that keeps me on my toes. think I almost thrive off it. And what else? How have I changed? You definitely have to be a lot more confident. I'd say I'm definitely a lot more confident.
And deliberately so, you mean?
Yeah. Because you have to be sure about what you're doing and convince other people.
Yeah.
So for that, you can't really be very shy and retiring.
Yeah.
Which I definitely was before, or more so anyway.
Yeah. And what's the thing then that keeps you coming back to Londnr every day in the face of all of these questions and challenges? What keeps you going?
Yeah, sometimes I do want to hide from it, but I can never hide. It always knows where I am. I do genuinely really enjoy it. I love working with writers. I love reading, even if it's just articles and so on.
Yeah.
People are sending me. I love to read them. I love to think about how to make them better. So I guess I'm an idealist. and I'm only doing what I want to be doing, I suppose.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's a wonderful note to end on. So thanks very much for your time, Nina.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me.
So thanks again to Nina for that fantastic interview. I love to see people who have such a passion for their project, and then something like that where it turns into, from a hobby, from a side project, into a proper business, into something that she can make money from. And the ingenuity that she'd needed to use to make money out of the magazine without killing it, to take that brand, to take that stance of free distribution of content, but to leverage that to make money almost on the side, and her determination to just cold email people for advice, and to put up with the rejection that comes from that, and to persist until you get those connections that are then going to pay off with great advice and connections. And of course, factoids to take away from today's episode: milkshakes as a popular murder weapon. That I'm going to have to go and look that one up. Thank you all very much for listening. Do, as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or your preferred channel, and give us a like or a review. That really helps people find the podcast. Next week is the Frankfurt Book Fair 2018 as I record this, and the interview we'll be releasing for the book fair is with Michael Baskar, author of The Content Machine and Curation, and he has lots of fantastic insights into, well, all sorts of things, as including, of course, his own digital publisher, Canello. So come back then and hear what Michael has to say. For now, goodbye. This was Talking Through My Hat, a podcast by John Pettigrew, founder of We Are Futureproofs. Please let me know your thoughts by leaving a review at Apple Podcasts or by commenting on the website, myhat.wearefutureproofs.com. You can subscribe to this channel at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Our theme music is from hooksounds.com.